Alright, alright! What's up mga kachimek? Nandito na naman si Sir Jello para sa panibagong episode ng ating chemistry session. Wala talagang pangalan ng ating vlog. So for today's session, last week we discussed about isotopes and ions. Specifically, I do mention, if I'm not mistaken, that when we were discussing about ions, I told you that it was a preparatory discussion for our discussion this week, which will be writing chemical formula and naming chemical compounds. No? Before we proceed further with that, I want you to learn the different kind of chemical formula and how do we convert chemical formulas into from one form into another. So with that, let me start by asking you this question. No? Are you familiar with this slide or with these words on the slide? Sige. Ana ohibok, jeg el kersidig, ikovanjo. Yeah. Kala mo naman talaga tama ang pag-pronounce. Mina karakastan sinuwa, jataymi, ishlibidish, sagapo, sagapo, sa bato. Aloha way iyay, awul, pong yu pang jitao. Hindi ko alam kung paano i-pronounce. Are you familiar with these words? Probably some of you have already words in mind, no? Probably you're responding, but I can't hear you because this is a pre-recorded video, or more probably you're familiar than this slide, than the previous one. No? Ti amo, Aishiteru, Sarang diba? Does it make sense already? Yes, you're actually right. But these words simply means I love you. I love you. Sana all. Di ba? Ito yung mga kataga na gusto mong bitawan niya. No? Kahit anong gawin mo, basta masabi niya lang sa'yo. Pero wala pa rin, no? Walang pag-asa. Hindi mo matanggap. Sige. You see, there are many ways to say I love you. No, kung nahihiya kang sabihin, you can use one of this. No? But that's not the point. No? So, why am I telling this to you? It's because in our life, in the entirety of history, there's a war, diba? There's always been a war. There's always been a challenge in every culture, every country, every different group of people. And one of the reason for that problem, or misunderstanding, is because we don't have a common language. That's why, just a short history, they decided to create a sort of universal language, which is I love you. Diba? And we'll realize na the other person is not cursing us. Diba? Pag sinabi kang, Jigel skardig. Ha? Ano, minuda ako? Or, kinurse niya ba ako? Or galit ba siya sa akin? Alam mo, sinabi kang, ti amo. Ti amo. Parang sometimes it sounds bad, but it's I love you, diba? To help us reach an understanding, to help us to talk our ways out, a universal language was created. However, in science, we do have as well our universal language, the scientific names, so on and so forth. In particular, in chemistry, we do not use the English language when we talk about stuff, specifically chemicals. So we use chemical formula rather than English. Why is that? Say for instance, I'm a scientist or you're a scientist and you went to other country, diba? And you can't speak English, or probably if you can speak English, I don't know. Halimbawa, you ask for asin. Asin, give me asin. I need asin for experiment. Asin. Go to the church because you're a sinner. Charot, di ba? Pero ganyan ang mga American jokes. Baduy. Pero tumatawa sila, Hindi pasok sa ating panlasa. You will make it English. Assault. I'm not attacking you. Pin him down. Maybe he's a terrorist. Diba? It creates confusion or miscommunication. Halimbawa naman, you want sugar. Diba? Dito sa atin, we call it asukar. Sa Bicol, sa Manila, asukal. But in the United States, it becomes sugar. Diba? Sa German naman, nagiging siyang Zgar. Tapos sa French, Mohames. Charot lang yung German tapos French. The point is, we have different way to address chemicals. So that would be difficult when scientists are sharing information or collaborating information. Specifically when sharing products, diba? Have you noticed some of our products, I'm not sure if it is this one, no? O, alam ba, si Pau, naka-English naman siya, so walang problema. However, most of you probably are ordering products from Korea, from Thailand, from Indonesia, no? Or maybe you're not ordering directly from them, but you are buying from stores without knowing that these products are not from our country, di ba? Mas minamahal mo yung banyaga. But nonetheless, these are effective products. That's why you keep on purchasing them. However, paano natin malalaman if it's dangerous or if it's allergic or if it causes allergy, one of our allergens? So how would we know that it's safe to use for us? No, this is where chemistry kicks in. The relevance of chemical formula, specifically in the ingredients part. So halos naputol dito. The chemical formula would be the universal language of chemistry, and this will help us as we proceed further with discussions in chemistry. So you can say I love you as well, no, by using chemical formulas. And paano yun? Alamin mo. Char. So for today's session, we are going to talk about chemical formulas. Alright, so how about chemical formulas? Now, for today's session, this will be the setup of our discussion. I'll make sure na hindi siya lalagpas ng 30 minutes. So we'll be first try to differentiate molecular from empirical formula. Though there's a third one, the structural formula, I want to highlight first this two because the structural formula has its own separate discussion on the later part of our chemistry one. Probably nga, ang highlight niya is more on sa chemistry 2 na. And then, second, be able to convert molecular formula to empirical formula. And I know this sounds probably, again, frightening because these are new terms, but I'll try to make sure, as I promised, this will be as easy as piece of cake. Parang redundant yun. As this will be a piece of cake. So, chemical formulas. As I mentioned, elements are represented by chemical symbols. So what are chemical symbols? These are your letter or letters. No, usually comes in 2 letters or 1 letter alone that represents element. No, but when we represent compound, we use chemical formula. And then, si later part niya na is a chemical equation. So again, I keep on reiterating this one so that you will not be confused and you will not use the terms interchangeably. If there is no arrow, no equal sign, and there are more than 1 letter or 2 letters, that is our chemical formula. So chemical symbol, chemical formula, chemical equation. So hopefully, you'll never forget that. So what is an element and what is a compound? So we've learned that in our discussion on matter, but just a quick recall, both are pure substances. So I'll be using my marker right now. So both are pure substances. So I cannot see my highlighter. Okay, it's here. Both are under pure substances, meaning they are made up of a definite composition. However, their difference is the elements are made up of only one kind of atom, while the compound are mixed, or combined together in a fixed ratio. Elements that are combined together in a fixed ratio. So you can simply say that elements are made up of one kind of atom, while compounds, you can simply say they are made up of 2 or more elements or 2 or more kind of atoms. So that's how the compound differs from the elements. And then, as I mentioned a while ago, when we talk about elements, we use symbols, chemical symbols in particular. But when we talk about compounds, we use the word chemical formula. Pag minami chemical formulae. Yeah, hindi chemical formulas. And to mind you, there are 118 elements known as of now. But the compounds is endless. No, it's infinite. You cannot list them all because it goes on and on forever. And why is that? No, we will learn later. Why are compounds endless? No. Sige. Just a quick test to for you to for me to check if you understand element of compound. Are these images on the left side element or compound? No? The answer is only one. Ito kasi yung medyo confusing, no? May nagtanong din nga during the quiz about this one. No? And that's good. You're asking question. So what do you think? Yeah, I'll give you a minute for that. Pause nyo na lang. Right? I think that's an enough thinking time since this is just a guess. No? These are actually, at one look, you will assume that they are compound because there are numbers, no? There are subscript on the letters, or specifically on chemical symbols, or below the chemical symbols. But to mind you, again, elements are made up of only one kind of atom. Diba? Wala ditong naiibang atom in the particular sets. What makes them different is they cannot exist alone. Meaning, si hydrogen, you cannot see a hydrogen roaming around being just an H. No? It always come in pair. Diba? Ayaw niyang iwanan ang kanyang kakambal. Diba? Or ang kanyang kapartner. Diba? Sana all. The nitrogen will always come in pair. N2, F2O2I2, Cl2Br2. And these are the elements we actually call diatomic elements. No? Anyari. Nagsasarili. So these are elements which cannot exist with only one atom, no, one piece of atom. They must come in pair always. So that is why we call them diatomic. From the word di, two atom, no, two atom elements. So diatomic elements. So that's hydrogen, nitrogen, fluorine, oxygen, iodine, chlorine, and bromine. Why am I telling you this? Because if we want to use them in creating chemical formula, we cannot simply write on a separate area hydrogen as H alone. Or when writing oxygen, we don't simply say O. That's because it's the chemical symbol of oxygen. It always come in pair because these are diatomic. Now, eto, may konting memorization na tayo dito. Because out of 118 elements, these 7 are the only elements that are diatomic. So, ulitin natin. That's hydrogen, nitrogen, fluorine, oxygen, iodine, chlorine, and bromine. So, we created a simple mnemonics for that, no? Para mas madaling matandaan. In a book, no, that I have read, or in a video I've watched probably 2 years ago, they use this mnemonics, no? Have no fear on ice cold beer. Medyo confusing lang sa may cold beer na, 'di ba? Kasi si cold beer, si cold is a Cl, 'di ba? Si bromine is a Br. Unlike the rest one, it would really tell you with the first letter, hydrogen, nitrogen, fluorine, oxygen. Pero dito, pwede ka kasing mamali na carbon. So be mindful pag gagamitin mo tong mnemonics. It is Cl. Dito naman, pwede ka mamali as boron, but it's bromine or bromine. Different pronouncement. So these are your 7 diatomic elements. Pwede mo din gamitin to, di ba? Have no fear of exam sa chem, brother. Pero mali na. Kasi, wala ng L. Chem 1 dapat, para si L1. Ito, BR pa rin. Yan. Pinilit ko lang. Sorry. So, have no fear on ice cold beer. But I'm not motivating you to drink. I'm motivating you to remember the 7 diatomic elements so you will not be tricked by saying these are compounds just because they have their subscript. Specifically, may 2 sila na subscript. Alright, moving forward. again, what is a chemical formula? As I've said, no, it's a way of naming a compound, no, or writing what a compound is. At the same time, what we are after is to determine how many atoms are there on each element. So it will tell us gaano ba karami yung gatas, gaano ba karami yung asukal, 'di ba? Sa 3-in-1, parang ganon. If you know, pwede mong gawin separating technique, isa-isahin mo yung asukal, yung kape, ilan ba yung gatas. Pag bored ka sa bahay niya, gawin niyo yan. Ewan ko lang kung di ka mabaliw. Anyways, the chemical formula would tell us how many atoms are there per element. And then, of course, it contains as well the symbols. So we will know what element it is. So first, it's a way of writing the compound or how to name a compound. That's one way in indicating what compound it is. Second, it will tell us what elements are involved in that compound or are part of that compound. And third, it gives a specific number on how many atoms are there in such compound. So for the chemical formula, we have 3 types. The molecular formula, the empirical formula, and the structural formula. So what are the differences between the 3? So when we talk about molecular formula, it is somehow called the regular formula or the true formula. So whatever a compound is, we count or we detect what elements are involved in that compound, and then we count how many atoms are there. Say for instance, an ethene or an ethene, no, hindi 18, hindi siya nagdebut. An ethene. So an ethene is a carbon with actually with 4 carbons and then with 8 hydrogen. So ganyan ang ethene natin. If I'm going to draw that, sige, let me change pen with a little point. If I'm going to draw that, my ethene would be like this one. So C. So imagine that those are inside atoms. So these are my carbons. So may mga nakabit dyan na hydrogen. Sige, 3 ng hydrogen. I need 8. Hydrogen. Sige, na-delay. Hydrogen ulit. Hydrogen. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And we have, there you go, 4 carbons, 8 hydrogen. So usually, we draw chemical like this one with their actual structure. And when we write it like in this form, either with circle to represent their atoms or simply just the symbols, we are actually referring about the structural formula. So if we want a full detailed compound, no, to get the most out of a compound, if we need even the structure, we use the structural formula. Why is that? Aside from it tells us what elements are involved, it also tells us the actual number of atoms. And aside from that, it tells us how the atoms are arranged. No? Si structural formula ang pinaka-detail sa 3 chemical formula. However, no, it would be not helpful, it would not be that efficient if every time we will be using the structural formula. Halimbawa, humingi ako sa iyo ng ingredients. Paano ko gagawin tong bomba na ipapasabog ko sa Malacanang? Char lang, joke lang, recorded pala to. Paano ko gagawa ng bomba? Ma'am Irma, tulungan mo ako, may plano ako, gagawa ko ng bomba. Kung ito-drawing pa to ni Ma'am Irma, tapos ang daming lista, wala na yung opportunity ng papasabugin ko or nadakip na ako, hindi ko pa nakukuha yung complete list. Di ba? You see the point? Or if I'm using this structural formula every time, alam ba, sa products ko, ang laki ng magiging sachet ng chichirya natin. Kasi, sa ingredients, naka-structural formula. So, they realize it's a bit of a hassle. So instead of writing it like this one in a structural formula, they converted it into a structural formula. A molecular formula rather. So si molecular formula is a somehow summarized structural formula. Inalis lang natin si arrangement of atoms, no, in this slide, no, how the atoms are arranged. But still, the element is there, the carbon and the hydrogen, and the amount or the number of atoms are still present. So that's C4H8. However, si empirical formula is the most unique of all, no, 'di ba? Tamad pa rin ako. I don't want this one. No, here comes now the empirical formula. It is defined as the simplest ratio of whole numbers of elements that make up of a compound. So ito, pwede pa pala siyang pasimplihin. So take note of this one. The empirical formula is just like your lowest form in mathematics. Diba? When we are dealing with fractions, our 5/10 or 5/10 is simply 1/2. Diba? Our 3/6, 3/6, that's also 1/2. And our 10/20, that is still 1/2. Diba? What's the point of saying that? Our molecular formula works like that. No? Our empirical formula is the simplest form of our molecular formula. So we could rewrite this in a simpler one by actually getting the simplest form of 4 and 8. No? Para i-divide natin siya with the whole number that could divide them exactly. And that is what? That is 4. So if we divided by 4, 8 divided by 4, you'll get 1 here. So what will remain would be C1. And then on the other side, what would remain is C2. Because that's just 4/8 is just 1/2, like your fractions. And then we don't write 1 anymore, so we simply write CH2. And again, bakit natin to ginawa? Notice that your 1/2 fraction can have many other fractions, like I've mentioned nga, 5/10, 3/6, 2/4, 10/2. Now, same with our empirical formula. My empirical formula can generate a lot of molecular formula. Now, hopefully you're getting the point. So, aside from C4H8, I could also write C8H16. Hindi nagfa-follow ang aking pen. No, naglalag siguro. So, sana mag-appear in a few. Ay, okay. O, yan na. Pero, naging 11. So, focus na lang sa sinasabi ni Sir Jello. So, as I was saying, I can write C8 and then H16. Diba? Is C4H8 the same with CHH16? Their empirical formula, ito na yung importante. In chemistry, their empirical formula is the same, meaning their basic composition, their foundation is the same. However, this becomes a different compound now. No? A different compound. No? I could also write 16H32. I can write C32H64, and I can go on and on. That's why I said a while ago that the list of compounds are endless, infinite, uncountable, because it goes on and on, no, as we mix and we continue mixing. That is why, for scientists, what is more important is to know the foundation, or to know what makes up that compound in the simplest form. And that is why we have the third one, no, the empirical formula, the C2H2. Ito yung after. This is what we are after. No, but yan, to mind you, both three are equally important. No, ngayon ang highlight lang natin si empirical formula. Hopefully you get the point. So again, Martin Luther King said, "There's no value until we put it into practice. Knowledge has no value until we put it into practice." Say for instance, this one, no, in image naman, if you don't want words, this is your molecular formula for type of saccharide, if I'm not mistaken, C6H heroxes ata to. Diba? The brother or relative of your glucose, fructose, basta saccharides. No? So this one is C6H12O6. And if you're sharp, you'll realize that this can be simplified by dividing all elements, no, actually all the subscript, not the elements, by 6. Diba? Kung gagamitin natin si structural formula, ganito yung magiging itsura niya. Medyo magulo, masakit sa mata, nakakatakot. Diba? Let's admit that. But we'll be focusing on this on the latter part. But for now, X ka muna, structural formula. Ayaw mo na kitang pansin. Nandito muna tayo. So, I can simplify them by dividing it by 6. And that's why I can have now CH2O. So, this is the empirical formula or the simplest form of this particular compound. So, hopefully, that's clear. So, let's try. In your houses, hindi na ako mag-aantay, hindi na ako magpo-pause. So, for you to practice, get a pen and a paper, or kung matalino ka mentally, I have no problem with that. Every time, no, pause it muna kasi didire-diretsohin ko para ma-practice mo rin and ma-check kung tama yung sagot mo kasi mahirap pag pre-recorded discussion, 'di ba? So, tell me if it's an empirical formula or a molecular formula. If it's a molecular formula, write the empirical formula. So, halimbawa, example, ganito. C4H8. First question, can I still simplify this one? Checking at the subscripts of the atoms. Now, by the way, I can also ask you, sige, what are the information we can get from this particular compound? Sir, this compound is made up of carbon and hydrogen. So, 2 elements. Carbon and hydrogen. Ano pa? Sir, I know that there are 4 carbons in this compound and there are 8 hydrogen in this compound. So, very good. Yan, another way. Now, is that a molecular or empirical formula? Very good. That is, yan, sana pinos mo, di ba? Kesa yun nabigla ka, tapos pinagtawanan mo, paya ka, sir, di man ako nagsimbag. Yan, pero again, practice sa mga susunod. So, this is a molecular formula. So, to practice it, if it's a molecular formula, I'll be writing the chemical formula. So, 4 and 8, they're at, I think, in mathematics, you call it the least common multiple or the LCM, if I'm not mistaken. Kasi kung fraction, denominator, di ba, LCD, least common denominator. So, that's 4 over 8. I'll divide it by 4 kasi parehas naman sila divisible by 4. Hopefully, you still remember your divisibility rules. Kung hindi naman, Google, Altab. That would be C1H. Example pa lang nga natin to kanina, C1H2. But again, I don't want to write the 1 anymore because it's already given. So, CH2. This is now my empirical formula because this one is a molecular formula. Alright, up to you for the next one. C3NH. Okay, very good. Hopefully, nag-pause ka na this time. Na kung hindi pa, di ko pa naman sinasabi ang sagot, so pause ka muna. Sige, ayaw mo talaga mag-pause, di wag. So, C3NH, that is an empirical formula. Because, I forgot to mention, you cannot have a subscript that is in a fractional form, no? Or decimal point. It should be always a whole number. So, C3N8. I can divide it by 3, but this one I cannot. So, by simply divisibility rules, 3 and 8 would not match. Therefore, this is already an empirical formula. Now, so that this item would not be wasted, I'll be writing at least 2 molecular formula. So, you can try it as well. So, I can create C6 and 16. So, what did I do? Pinakamadali, i-multiply ko lang siya ng 2. Kasi pinakamadaling divisibility rule para sa akin is 2. Pwede ko naman i-multiply by 3 by having C9H27. Diba? I am actually forming now a different and a unique compound based on this foundation. So these two are example of molecular formulas out of empirical formula. So if I would like to continue, I can multiply it by 4. So I'll get C12, tapos na mali ang multiplication ni sir, no? C12, 1632, H32. Alright. So there you go. 3 molecular formula out of an empirical formula. Sige, try this one. Diba? Inulit ko lang yan. Tinatry ko lang kung you're paying attention. Nadoble pala yung slide. So this is our CH2. Sige, next. Try this one. C3 and 12. Hopefully you pause. Tapos specific na ang tanong, what is the empirical formula? Okay, very good. Diba? We divide it by 3. Sige. After dividing it by 3, the arrow is not, don't imitate the arrow when answering like this one. Pinapakita ko lang yung flow. Kasi pag nilagyan mo ng arrow, it becomes an equation. Baka ma-misinterpret. So, para lang makita lang, from a molecular formula, I converted it into an empirical formula. So, if you get the answer CN4, you got it right. Very good. You're doing it. How about this one? So, 3 na. Sir, pwede ba yan? Of course. No, it could be 4 or 5. So, what are we going to do? Okay. Very good. Hopefully, you're done. Basic. So, mas dumadali na to. Nagiging boring na. You divide both, all sides rather, by 5. That becomes CH2 and then O. Yan. Si Cho. Cho. Diba? Pag di nagturo si teacher, ituro mo. Ang tawag sa'yo para Cho. Char lang. Bicol term yun. So, sa mga hindi taga Bicol, di mo magigets. Mga para Cho. Para sumbong. Now, how about, what is the empirical of P3 and 5? Di ba napaisip ka? So, tinatry lang kita. Walang empirical formula ito. Sometimes the students or the teacher will trick you by actually asking, what's the empirical formula? So, you will simply none. No? Wag pilitin kung ayaw. Di ba? That's very bad. Well, it's very painful. So, there's no whole number that can divide this and will lead you to a whole number. Technically, P3 and 5 is already an empirical formula. So, to get a molecular formula, you can multiply it by 2, both sides. So, you'll get P6 and 10. And then, you'll get P9 and 15 and so on and so forth. By the way, I forgot to mention on the previous example, so this one, kailangan all the elements involved are divisible by the same number. What do I mean by that? Halimbawa, C5H10O3. Ganon ang arrangement niya or ang subscript ng lahat. Ulitin ko, halimbawa, C5H10O3. You have to think of a number that can divide all the rest equally. No? Walang decimal place, walang fraction. So if you cannot do that, that is already an empirical formula. So dito nagkataon lang that all numbers are divisible by 5. So again, don't forget that. Kailangan lahat. Kaya anong implication nito? The more we add elements in the compound, the lesser it becomes prone to becoming a molecular formula. So mostly pag madami, automatic empirical formula agad yan, no? Unless parang ganito, it can still be divided. That is why most molecular formula na nakikita natin always come in two elements, no? 2 pairs lang sila. So basic to get the foundation. So how about this one? What is the empirical formula? Of course, the trick won't work twice. You cannot divide it by 5, by 2, by 3, by 1 only. So therefore, this is already an empirical formula. Hopefully nakakasabay ah. Kung hindi nakakasabay, okay lang. So there you have it. No, that's the end of our discussion. Just to reiterate what we have discussed right now, molecular formula is the true formula, the general formula, or the formula of an exact compound. However, for chemistry's sake, for convenience, for efficiency's sake, we can always convert our molecular formula, specifically when we are dealing about things that we only need, the foundation or the basic properties, into their empirical formula. So, molecular formula to empirical formula. There are infinite molecular formula, but there's only one empirical formula per compound. There you have it. Thank you mga kachimek. This has been Sir Jello. Peace out. Ching!